I am Isadora, 30 female, and I haven't lived at home in over a decade. But this story starts way back when I was 14, and my parents, Linda and Bob, decided I was old enough to contribute to the household by paying rent. Meanwhile, my older brother Jake, who was 19 at the time, got to live completely free while I handed over half my babysitting and part-time job money every month. Yeah, you read that right. They charged their 14-year-old daughter rent while their adult son lived like a king. Let me paint you a picture of how messed up my childhood was. We lived in this beautiful 4-bedroom house in a really nice neighborhood. It belonged to my grandfather originally, my mom's dad, but he'd been living in assisted care since I was about 12. The house was this gorgeous 1950s colonial with hardwood floors, a huge backyard, and this amazing wraparound porch that I used to love sitting on. Jake got the master bedroom upstairs because he was the oldest. It had its own bathroom, walk-in closet, the works. I got stuck in the tiny room next to my parents that used to be a sewing room. No joke, it was barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser. But hey, at least I got to pay $200 a month for the privilege of living in a closet. The favoritism was insane from day one. Jake could do absolutely nothing wrong in my parents' eyes. He dropped out of college after one semester because it was too hard and not the right fit. Mom just smiled and said, "Everyone finds their path differently." When I brought home straight A's, it was just expected. When Jake managed to pass his GED on the third try, they threw him a party. I remember being 15 and working at this local diner after school and weekends. The owner, Mrs. Patterson, was this sweet old lady who paid me cash under the table since I was too young to be officially employed. I'd come home exhausted, smelling like grease and cleaning supplies, just to hand over my rent money to Mom while Jake played video games in his room. "This is good for you, Isadora," Mom would always say. "You're learning responsibility and life skills. Jake needs more time to figure himself out." Figure himself out. At 20 years old, while I was working my ass off as a sophomore in high school, Jake's idea of contributing was occasionally taking out the trash when specifically asked 3 times. And even then, Mom would thank him like he just donated a kidney. Meanwhile, I was expected to clean the house, do my own laundry, buy my own school supplies, and pay rent. The worst part was how they'd explain it to other people. "We believe in teaching our kids the value of hard work," Dad would say at neighborhood barbecues. "Isadora's really mature for her age. She practically runs the household." Then Jake would wander over in his pajamas at 2 p.m., asking Mom for money to go out with friends. When I was 16, I got promoted to assistant manager at the diner. Mrs. Patterson saw how hard I worked and actually started paying me a decent wage. My rent immediately went up to $300 a month. Mom said since I was making more money, I should contribute more to the family. Made perfect sense, right? Punish the kid for succeeding. That same year, Jake got a DUI and needed $2,000 for a lawyer. Guess who had to take out a loan to help with family expenses? If you guessed the 16-year-old paying rent, you'd be correct. I'll never forget my 17th birthday. I'd been saving up for months to buy this used Honda Civic I'd found. Had the exact amount I needed, plus insurance for the first few months. I was so excited to finally have some independence, maybe not have to rely on rides from friends or take the bus everywhere. The morning of my birthday, I came downstairs to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with this serious look. Dad cleared his throat and said they needed to discuss my financial obligations now that I was almost an adult. "We've decided your rent is going up to $400 a month," Mom announced. "You're getting older, using more utilities, eating more food. It's only fair. $400 for a 17-year-old living in a converted sewing room. There went my car fund." I spent my 17th birthday crying in that tiny room while Jake had friends over in the living room, playing music too loud and eating the pizza Mom had ordered for them, just because. I graduated high school with a 4.2 GPA and a full scholarship to State University. You'd think my parents would be proud, maybe even let up on the rent since I was clearly doing something right. Nope. They informed me that since I'd be living at home during college to save money, my rent was going up to $500 a month. "College students pay more in rent," Dad explained. "You're getting a deal living here." A deal. I was paying $500 a month to live in a room the size of most people's walk-in closets, while my 24-year-old brother paid nothing to live in the master suite. College was rough, really rough. I was taking a full course load, working part-time at a campus bookstore, and still working weekends at the diner. Mrs. Patterson had sold the place, but the new owners kept me on because I basically ran the place by that point. Every penny I earned went to tuition, books, and that damn rent. Jake, meanwhile, had discovered he was an entrepreneur, which meant he was selling random junk on eBay and calling it a business. He made $50 a month, but Mom and Dad were so proud of his initiative, they even converted part of the basement into an office space for him with a new computer, printer, and filing cabinets they bought with their own money. I was studying for finals in the tiniest room in the house, while Jake had an entire basement office for his eBay empire. The breaking point came during my junior year. I'd been accepted into this amazing internship program at a law firm downtown. It was unpaid, but the experience would have been incredible for my pre-law track. I'd worked so hard to get it, went through multiple interviews, impressed everyone with my work ethic. I couldn't take it because unpaid meant I couldn't cover my rent and living expenses. When I explained this to my parents, asking if maybe we could work something out for just one semester, Mom actually laughed. "Honey, the real world doesn't give you breaks just because you want something. If this internship was really that important to you, you'd figure out a way to make it work." That night, I called the law firm and turned down the internship. The lawyer who had been excited to mentor me sounded so disappointed. I made up some story about family obligations, but I think he knew the truth. Meanwhile, Jake announced he was taking a 6-month sabbatical from his eBay business to travel and find himself. Mom and Dad thought this was a wonderful idea and even gave him $3,000 as a going-away present. I graduated college magna cum laude with a degree in political science and immediately moved out, found a tiny studio apartment across town, and got a job at a different law firm as a paralegal. It wasn't much, but for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't handing over hundreds of dollars to live in a closet. My parents were actually offended that I moved out. "We thought you'd want to stay home and save money," Mom said. "Your room will always be here for you." My room. The sewing room I'd paid over $30,000 to live in over the years. I went no contact pretty much immediately. It wasn't a dramatic decision or anything. I just stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped responding to their texts asking when I was coming to Sunday dinner. For the first time in my life, I could breathe. Jake, now 28, was still living at home, rent-free. I'd hear updates through extended family sometimes. He'd tried and failed at several different business ventures: a food truck that lasted 3 months, a t-shirt printing business that never sold a single shirt, some kind of cryptocurrency trading thing that lost him a bunch of Mom and Dad's money. But he was still their golden boy, still the son who just needed a little more time and support to find his way. Meanwhile, I'd worked my way up at the law firm, started as a paralegal, got promoted to case manager, eventually became office manager. The partners liked me because I actually understood hard work and responsibility. Imagine that. I bought my own condo when I was 27. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Paid for it myself, furnished it myself, maintained it myself. It was the first time in my life I lived somewhere that I wasn't constantly reminded I was unwanted or unwelcome. Around that same time, Jake had his latest crisis. He'd gotten some girl pregnant, and she'd left him when she figured out he was a 30-year-old man living in his parents' basement with no job and no prospects. Mom and Dad stepped up to help with child support payments, of course. Couldn't let their precious boy face the consequences of his actions. I heard about all this through my Aunt Carol, Mom's sister, who thought the whole situation was as messed up as I did. She'd apparently tried talking to Mom about the favoritism over the years, but Mom always had excuses. "Jake's just more sensitive," she'd say. "He needs more support. Isadora's always been so independent." Independent. That's what they called it when they forced a 14-year-old to pay rent. The really crazy part is that over the years, I started to believe maybe they were right. Maybe I was just naturally more independent, more capable of handling things on my own. Maybe Jake really did need more help. It took years of therapy to realize that wasn't independence. It was survival. 3 years ago, my grandfather passed away. He'd been in assisted living for over a decade by then, and honestly, I'd lost touch with him. I was so busy trying to survive my childhood and then build my own life that I didn't visit as much as I should have. I went to the funeral, of course. It was awkward seeing my parents for the first time in years. They tried to act like nothing had happened, like we were still one big happy family. Jake was there too, now 32 and still living at home, looking exactly the same as he had at 22. "We should get together soon," Mom said at the reception. "It's been too long." I just nodded politely and left as soon as I could. After the funeral, I assumed that was it. Grandpa was gone. The house would probably go to Mom, and life would go on. I had my own life, my own place, my own career. I didn't need anything from them. That's why I was so confused when this lawyer called me 6 months later. Miss Johnson, this is Robert Chen from Chen and Associates. I'm calling about your grandfather's estate. I figured there was some paperwork I needed to sign or something. Maybe he'd left me some small keepsake. I'm afraid there's been some confusion about your grandfather's will, the lawyer continued. Could you come in to discuss this? It's rather urgent. The urgency in his voice made me nervous. I scheduled an appointment for the next week, figuring it was probably some kind of tax issue or debt that needed to be settled. When I walked into Robert Chen's office, he had this huge file spread out on his desk and a look on his face that I couldn't quite read. Miss Johnson, he said, I need to ask you a few questions first. Are you aware of the terms of your grandfather's will? I assumed everything went to my mother, I said. The house, his savings, whatever else he had. Mr. Chen opened the file and pulled out several documents. Your grandfather's will was actually quite specific. He left the house at 1247 Maple Street to you with the stipulation that ownership would transfer when you turned 18. I stared at him. I'm sorry, what? You've owned your childhood home for 12 years, Ms. Johnson. Your grandfather wanted to ensure you had security given your family situation. My head started spinning. But my parents live there. My brother lives there. Yes, Mr. Chen said carefully. That's where things get complicated. He pulled out more documents, bank statements, property tax records, maintenance receipts, all showing payments made by Linda and Bob Johnson for a house they didn't own. It appears your parents have been unaware of the change in ownership. The property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs have all been paid by them, but legally they've been living in your house. This can't be right, I said. Someone would have told me. There would have been paperwork. Mr. Chen's expression got grimmer. There should have been. Your grandfather left very specific instructions for me to contact you immediately when you turned 18 to explain the inheritance and help you understand your options. He pulled out another document. This is a copy of the certified letter I sent to your address in 2011. It was returned as undelivered. I looked at the address. It was my parents' house where I was living and paying rent. I sent 3 more letters over the following months, Mr. Chen continued, all returned undelivered. I also attempted to call the phone number on file. What phone number? He showed me. It was my parents' landline. I left several messages explaining that I needed to speak with you about your inheritance. I was told by someone who identified herself as your mother that you were busy with college and she would pass along the message. The room started spinning. My parents had intercepted every attempt to tell me I owned the house. For 12 years, I'd been paying rent to live in my own property while they collected my money and paid the actual home ownership costs. There's more, Mr. Chen said quietly. I've been looking into the property records, and there have been some irregularities. He showed me documents I didn't understand at first, something about refinancing and home equity loans. Your parents took out a mortgage against the property 3 years ago, he explained. They borrowed $150,000 using the house as collateral. How is that legal if I own it? Mr. Chen's jaw tightened. It's not. Someone would have had to forge your signature on these documents. He showed me the loan paperwork. There was my signature, or something that looked like it, but I'd never seen these papers before in my life. This is fraud, I said. Yes, it is. The next hour was a blur of legal explanations and document reviews. The bottom line was this. I'd legally owned my childhood home since I was 18. My parents had been living there illegally, essentially as squatters, while charging me rent and committing mortgage fraud by borrowing against property they didn't own. What are my options? I asked. Mr. Chen laid it out for me. I could file criminal charges for the fraud and the intercepted communications. I could sue for the rent money I'd paid over the years. I could have them evicted immediately since they had no legal right to be there. Or I could try to work something out privately. What would you recommend? That depends on what kind of relationship you want to have with your family going forward, he said. I thought about that for a long time. What kind of relationship did I want? I thought about 14-year-old me handing over babysitting money while Jake played video games. I thought about giving up that internship because I couldn't afford rent on a house I actually owned. I thought about living in a closet-sized room for years while paying for the privilege. I want them out, I said, but I want to do it right. Mr. Chen nodded. We'll need to serve them with proper notice. Typically, we'd give 30 days, but given the circumstances and the fact that there's been fraud involved, we might be able to expedite. Actually, I said, I have a better idea. Jake's 35th birthday party was planned for the following Saturday. Mom had mentioned it during one of her guilt trip calls I'd been ignoring. A backyard barbecue to celebrate another year of Jake finding himself. I want to serve the eviction notice at the party, I told Mr. Chen. He raised an eyebrow. That's dramatic. They've had 12 years to be honest with me, I said. I think I'm entitled to a little drama. The week leading up to the party was surreal. I drove by the house, my house, several times, just looking at it with completely different eyes. The new roof they'd put on a few years ago, the fresh paint, the landscaping Mom was always posting about on Facebook, all paid for while they collected rent money from me. I hired a private investigator to document everything. Photos of Jake's car in the driveway, a BMW Mom and Dad had co-signed for, pictures of the basement office setup, evidence of long-term occupancy by people who had no legal right to be there. I also had Mr. Chen look into the mortgage situation more carefully. Turns out the $150,000 they'd borrowed had gone to some pretty interesting places. Jake's various failed business ventures, a luxury vacation to Europe, new furniture and appliances throughout the house. They'd been living high on the hog, using my property as their personal ATM. Saturday arrived, and I drove to the house around 2 p.m. I could hear music and laughter from the backyard. I parked on the street and walked up to the front door of the house I legally owned. Mom answered, and her face lit up like Christmas morning. Isadora, oh my God, you came. I can't believe it. She hugged me before I could stop her. Jake's going to be so surprised. He's been hoping you'd reach out. We all have. I bet, I said. She led me through the house, my house, pointing out all the improvements they'd made. We redid the kitchen last year, and you should see the master bathroom. Your father finally finished the renovation. My house. They'd been renovating my house. The backyard was full of people I didn't recognize. Jake's friends, some neighbors, a few relatives. Jake was standing by the grill wearing an apron that said "Birthday Boy" and holding a beer. He looked exactly the same as he had at 25, just softer around the edges. Holy crap, Isadora, he called out when he saw me. I can't believe you're here. He bounded over and gave me this big bear hug like we were best friends who hadn't seen each other in too long instead of siblings who'd had no contact for years. We should catch up, he said. I've got so much to tell you about my latest project. I'm getting into cryptocurrency mining now. It's going to be huge. Of course he was. For about an hour, I played along, made small talk, let relatives gush about how good it was to see the family together again. Mom kept taking pictures, posting them on Facebook with captions like, "My babies are both here, and family is everything." Dad pulled me aside at one point and said, "Your mother's been worried about you. We both have. This distance between us isn't healthy." "You're right," I said. "It's time to clear the air." Around 3:30, Mr. Chen arrived. I'd given him instructions to park down the street and wait for my text. He was carrying an official-looking folder and wearing his most serious lawyer expression. "Excuse me," he said, walking into the backyard. "I'm looking for Linda and Bob Johnson and Jake Johnson." The party chatter died down. Mom looked confused, but walked over with her usual hostess smile. "That's us. Can I help you?" "I'm Robert Chen, attorney at law. I have some legal documents that need to be served." Dad stepped forward, his expression darkening. "What kind of legal documents?" Mr. Chen opened his folder with deliberate slowness. "Eviction notices for Linda Johnson, Bob Johnson, and Jake Johnson requiring you to vacate the premises at 1247 Maple Street within 30 days. The silence was deafening. "I'm sorry, what?" Mom's voice went up an octave. "You're being evicted from this property. The legal owner is requiring you to leave." Jake laughed, that nervous laugh he always did when he was confused. "Legal owner? This is our house, our parents' house." "Actually," Mr. Chen said, looking directly at him, "this house belongs to Isadora Johnson. It has since she was 18 years old." You could have heard a pin drop. All eyes turned to me. I stood up from the picnic table where I'd been sitting and walked over to stand next to Mr. Chen. "Surprise," I said. "Happy birthday, Jake." Mom's face went through about 15 different expressions before settling on complete panic. "This is ridiculous. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Mr. Chen said. He pulled out more documents. "Isadora inherited this property from her grandfather 12 years ago. You've been living here illegally while charging the actual owner rent." "That's impossible," Dad sputtered. "We would have known. Someone would have told us." "Someone tried," I said. Mr. Chen sent multiple letters and made several phone calls. You intercepted all of them and told him I was too busy to talk. The look on Mom's face told me everything I needed to know. She remembered those calls. Not only that, Mr. Chen continued, but you took out a mortgage against property you don't own, which constitutes fraud. You forged the property owner's signature on loan documents to borrow $150,000. Jake was looking back and forth between everyone like he was trying to process a foreign language. Wait, so Isadora owns this house? Since she was 18, Mr. Chen confirmed. Which means, I said, speaking directly to Jake for the first time, that for the past 12 years, while I was paying Mom and Dad rent to live here, I was actually paying rent to live in my own house. Jake's mouth fell open. While you, I continued, have been living rent-free in my house for 12 years. The implications started sinking in. Jake looked at Mom and Dad. Did you know about this? Mom started crying. We didn't know. How could we have known? You intercepted legal correspondence for over a decade, Mr. Chen said matter-of-factly. That's a federal crime. Dad stepped forward, his face red. Now look here. We've put a lot of money into this house. We've been paying taxes, insurance, maintenance. We deserve some consideration. You deserve prison time, I said. But I'm being generous. You have 30 days to get out of my house. Your house? Jake's voice cracked. But this is my home. I've lived here my whole life. And I paid rent to live here while you lived for free, I shot back, in my own house. One of Jake's friends, clearly drunk and not reading the room, laughed and said, Dude, that's so crazy that your little sister owns your house. The look Jake gave him could have melted steel. Mom was full-on sobbing now. We can work this out as a family. We don't need lawyers. Isadora, honey, you're being unreasonable. Unreasonable? My voice rose. I paid you over $30,000 in rent to live in my own house while you charged your adult son nothing. You committed fraud using my property. You've been stealing from me for 12 years and I'm being unreasonable? Where are we supposed to go? Jake asked. And for the first time in his life, he sounded genuinely panicked. I don't know, I said. Figure it out. You've had 35 years to become an adult. Maybe it's time to start. You can't just kick us out, Dad said. We have rights. No, Mr. Chen interjected. You don't. You have no legal right to be here. You've been trespassing for 12 years. The party guests were starting to murmur among themselves, phones coming out to record the drama. Mom looked mortified. Please, she begged. Can we discuss this privately? You're embarrassing us in front of everyone. You embarrassed yourselves, I said. This is just the consequences. Aunt Carol, who'd been standing near the back of the crowd, pushed forward. Linda, is this true? You've been charging Isadora rent on her own house? Mom couldn't even look at her sister. Since she was 14, I confirmed, while Jake lived completely free. Jesus Christ, Linda, Aunt Carol breathed. What the hell is wrong with you? That's when Jake finally lost it. You can't just show up after years of not talking to us and kick us out. This is our family home. It's my family home, I said. Grandpa left it to me. Not to Mom and Dad, not to you, to me, because he knew exactly what kind of people you all are. What's that supposed to mean? Jake demanded, his face flushing. It means he saw how you treated me, I said. He saw that you were a grown man living off Mom and Dad while your 14-year-old sister was working to pay rent. He wanted to make sure I had something, even if you all never gave me anything. Jake's face turned purple. I never asked for you to pay rent. That was Mom and Dad's decision. And you never once said it was unfair, I shot back. Never once offered to help. Never once suggested that maybe the grown man should contribute to the household before the kid. That's not my fault. Nothing is ever your fault, is it? I looked around at the crowd of people watching this unfold. 35 years old, living in Mom and Dad's basement, no job, no prospects, and still blaming everyone else for your problems. I have a job, he protested. What job? I'm starting a consulting business. With what credentials? What expertise? You've never successfully run a business in your life. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. I need to leave these documents with you. He handed the eviction notices to each of them. You have 30 days from today to vacate the premises. All personal belongings must be removed. What about our stuff? Mom asked desperately. We have a lifetime of belongings here. Take them, I said, but you have 30 days. Where are we supposed to live? I don't know. Rent an apartment like normal people do. We can't afford rent in this area, Dad said. This house is paid off. We don't have mortgage payments. You mean my house is paid off, I corrected. And you can't afford rent because you've been living off the equity in my property instead of building your own wealth. Mr. Chen handed me a folder. These are copies of everything for your records. If they don't vacate voluntarily, we can begin formal eviction proceedings through the courts. What about the mortgage they took out? I asked. That's fraud. We'll need to contact the FBI about that. FBI? Mom's voice was a whisper. You forged someone else's signature to fraudulently obtain $150,000, Mr. Chen explained. That's wire fraud, bank fraud, and forgery. Federal crimes. Jake sank into one of the lawn chairs. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. What's insane, I said, is that you're 35 years old, and your biggest concern is being kicked out of your parents' house. Most people your age own their own homes, have careers, have families they're responsible for. I'm trying to start a family, he protested. By living in your parents' basement and working on get-rich-quick schemes? The party guests were starting to leave, sensing the family drama was going to continue for a while. Jake's friends awkwardly gathered their things and mumbled excuses about having other plans. Aunt Carol stayed, though. She walked over to Mom and said, Linda, I need to understand this. You charged your teenage daughter rent while letting your adult son live for free? Mom couldn't even answer. And you intercepted legal documents that would have told her she owned the house? Still no answer. For 12 years, you let her believe she was homeless and unwanted while living in her own property? It wasn't like that, Mom finally whispered. Then what was it like? Silence. I looked around at the backyard, my backyard, and felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. I'll be back in 30 days to inspect the property, I told them. Make sure you leave it in good condition. And don't even think about taking anything that's attached to the house. The appliances, the fixtures, the improvements you made, those all belong to the property now. Those appliances cost thousands of dollars, Dad protested. Then you shouldn't have installed them in someone else's house. I started walking toward the back gate, then turned around one more time. Oh, and Jake, happy 35th. Maybe your next birthday will be in your own place. As I walked through my house toward the front door, I could hear Mom crying and Dad trying to comfort her. Jake was arguing with someone on the phone, probably trying to figure out where he could crash. Mr. Chen followed me out to the street. That went well, he said with a slight smile. Better than I expected, I agreed. What happens if they don't leave voluntarily? Then we go through the courts, and you press charges for the fraud. Are you prepared for the family fallout? I looked back at the house, my house, where I'd spent so many miserable years being treated like an unwanted burden. There's no family to have fallout with, I said. There hasn't been for years. The drive home was surreal. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had real power over my own story. For years, I'd been the victim, the overlooked daughter, the responsible one, the one who had to figure everything out on her own. But it turned out I'd been the homeowner all along. That night, my phone started blowing up. Texts from Mom, calls from Dad, voicemails from Jake. Even some of the relatives who'd been at the party were reaching out wanting to know if what they'd witnessed was real. I didn't answer any of them. I was done being the one who had to manage everyone else's emotions and solve everyone else's problems. Over the next few weeks, I heard through Aunt Carol that Mom and Dad had found a small rental apartment across town. Jake was temporarily staying with a friend, but apparently that wasn't going well since he had no money and no job prospects. They kept calling, begging me to reconsider, offering to pay me back rent, suggesting we could work out some kind of arrangement where I owned the house but they could continue living there. The audacity was unbelievable. Exactly 30 days after the party, I showed up at the house with Mr. Chen and a locksmith. Mom and Dad had moved out, but they'd left behind a lot of stuff. Jake's entire basement setup was still there, his gaming systems, his office equipment, boxes of his belongings. I had everything donated to charity and changed the locks. The house was mine officially and completely for the first time in my life. I'm still deciding what to do with it. Part of me wants to sell it and be done with all the memories, but another part of me likes the idea of fixing it up, making it truly mine instead of the place where I was never wanted. Either way, it's my choice to make. For the first time in my life, I own something that can't be taken away from me, can't be used against me, and doesn't come with conditions or expectations. Jake texted me last week asking if he could come get his stuff. I texted back a picture of the Goodwill donation receipt. Update, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since the birthday party eviction, and I thought I'd update everyone on how things have played out. First, the legal stuff. The FBI did investigate the mortgage fraud, and it turned out to be even more extensive than we initially thought. Mom and Dad had taken out multiple loans over the years using forged documents. The total amount was closer to $300,000, not the $150,000 we originally discovered. Dad ended up pleading guilty to avoid a lengthy trial. He got 2 years of probation and has to pay restitution. Mom got a similar deal, but also had to do 200 hours of community service. Jake wasn't charged with anything since he apparently had no idea about the financial fraud, but that's probably because he's never paid attention to anything that didn't directly benefit him. As for the family dynamics, well, that's been interesting. About 3 months after the eviction, I got a call from Jake. He'd moved back in with Mom and Dad in their rental apartment, and apparently the three of them living in a 2-bedroom space wasn't going well. "I think I understand now," he said, "how hard things were for you growing up." "Do you?" I asked. "Living with them is intense and expensive. They're charging me rent." And I almost laughed out loud. "How much?" $400 a month for a couch." "Interesting," I said. "That's less than what they charged me for an actual room when I was 14. "I know, I get it now. They treated you really badly." I waited to see if there was more. Maybe an actual apology or acknowledgement of his own role in how I was treated. "So anyway," he continued, "I was wondering if maybe we could work something out with the house. Like maybe I could move back in and help you fix it up. I've learned a lot about home maintenance over the years." There it was. Even his moment of clarity was really just a setup to ask for something. "No," I said. "Come on, Isadora, we're family." Family doesn't charge their 14-year-old daughter rent while the adult children live free. Family doesn't intercept legal documents for 12 years. Family doesn't commit fraud using each other's property. And I hung up. I decided to keep the house. I'm slowly renovating it, doing a lot of the work myself on weekends. It's therapeutic, actually, taking apart the space that held so many bad memories and rebuilding it into something that's truly mine. I tore down the wall between my old tiny room and the room next to it, creating a proper master suite. I converted Jake's old basement office into a home gym. Every change I make feels like reclaiming another piece of my life. My parents still try to reach out occasionally, usually around holidays or birthdays. The messages are always some variation of family is family and we should put the past behind us. But they still haven't acknowledged what they did wrong or apologized for any of it. It's always about what I should do, what I should forgive, what I should get over. Jake sent me a Christmas card last year with a long note about how he's really changed and is working on himself. He mentioned that he's taking some online courses and thinking about getting into real estate. The card came with a small gift card to a coffee shop and a note saying he hoped we could start rebuilding our relationship. I donated the gift card and threw away the note. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some relationships are too damaged by years of mistreatment and neglect to salvage, and that's okay. Jake reached out one more time about 6 months ago. He'd apparently gotten evicted from Mom and Dad's apartment, shocking, I know, and was asking if he could stay in the house just temporarily while he got back on his feet. I didn't even respond. But here's the thing that really made me laugh. I found out through some mutual acquaintances that Jake has been telling people he's going to inherit the house when I die because family property should stay in the family. He apparently has no understanding that inheritance isn't automatic. And even if it was, the house was never family property. It was specifically left to me. Some people never learn. And honestly, that's fine. I don't need him to learn. I don't need my parents to understand. I don't need their apologies or their approval anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I'm free. Free from their control, free from their lies, free from the constant feeling that I had to earn my place in a family that never wanted me. Now, when I walk through my house, the one that's truly mine, I don't see the memories of a scared teenager handing over babysitting money. I see possibility. I see the life I've built. I see freedom.